All right. Good morning, everyone. And we are live. Welcome to another edition of Rogue Mornings. Very excited to be joined this morning by the one, no only Bankster Slayer. Bankster Slayer is host of the YouTube channel Slay the Bankster, also a great Rogue Money contributor. So very excited to be joined by her. But just as a quick reminder, make sure to go roguemoney.net. There's some great articles there. James, the Russian analyst, has been working hard the last couple of days. So go check those out. Make sure that you like our page on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, make sure you share our information and our videos. Also want to thank our sponsors. And again, myfreedomnow.us in the event of credit repair, you need a loan to help pay for any debt consolidation and so forth, myfreedomnow.us. Also, My Gold USB, surf the online without any type of government surveillance, military grade encryption, and then also one of the most secure Bitcoin wallets that you can get. So, Bankster, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been interesting. V's been out, and I'm glad that yourself yesterday W was able to join in. The entire Rogue Money team is really helping out this week. So it gets kind of lonely when you're on the air talking by yourself.
Yeah, you sit there wondering, I wonder if anyone's out there really listening.
Exactly. It was kind of like the night that V did the Coast to Coast AM, and I went into it thinking that it was just an hour show, and when we got to the 2 a.m. mark, and then they said we'll be back for another hour with V, and I'm like, oh wow, that's that's a whole other hour of number one staying awake, and number two engaging, coming up with conversations. But anyway, let's jump into it. It's been a minute since we've chatted. So what's on your radar?
Yeah, this continuing story of the sanctions, I think, is going to be continue to be pretty important because you've got the part that what Congress and Trump are signing, or what will probably get signed, and then you have the fire back from Russia with the closure, or the sending out, closing the embassy and kicking out the 755, you know, um, staff people. And I will mention now, Dr. Steve Pachenik was on Alex Jones's show yesterday, and he said this is really kabuki theater. What the Putin had to do something in order to, do something. He did something just for the sake of doing something, basically.
Right. He
But he
didn't want to
said
seem
it's
weak to the Russian people. Right. Absolutely.
right, and this has been coming for a long time. I mean, I know most people are not aware of the fact that during Obama's administration, Obama shut down a Russian property in this country. So Putin had really been holding back for quite a while, trying to see if anything was going to get sorted out. And in any event, the kicking out the 755 people was not that big of a deal. It looks like a big deal, but Pachenik said this was really kabuki theater, and in reality, it's still kind of business as usual between American oil and gas interests, who are working with Russia, which is why Tillerson is there anyway, having been an oil person. So
Right.
that part is not that big of a deal, but the the sanctions part now. Everyone really, there's an article that Pepe Escobar wrote in Sputnik, a couple days ago, and he said the sanctions against Russia are really, it's a sanction against Germany is really what it is, and Germany is going to they will have to fire back. They cannot stand this anymore, and and he Escobar referred to a treaty that Russia and Germany had back in the 1880s called the Reinsurance Treaty, which was this is one of those things that kind of was a stepping stone towards World War One. You can tell it was a complicated series of treaties that gave Russia and Germany freedom to kind of move in their little spheres, but there was a third party, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, had treaties that were on again, off again with Germany, And then there's this whole complicated mess with Germany trying to attract British alliances. And, for those of us who study history, you've got the whole Queen Victoria thing happening where all her kids are all married off to all these different families. And it actually almost gave me a headache just trying to understand all the alliances. But the whole thing was that for a while, Germany and Russia were kind of allied with each other. And it's when that treaty broke down, when the other countries attempted to isolate Germany diplomatically, well, that's when the real sparks of World War I began to fly. In fact, for those of you who are Netflix users, there is a great little mini-series produced in Russia, but with English subtitles and very easy to follow, about Catherine the Great. And she, I didn't even realize this till I watched the miniseries, is that Catherine the Great wasn't even Russian. She was from Germany, and she was sent there to marry into the ruling class in Russia in order to maintain some sort of alliance between Germany and Russia. So alliances with Germany and Russia always seem to come out of, these other messes that the Anglo-American Empire are creating.
Right, and it appears they've created a mess with these sanctions, and now you're witnessing pretty much the entire EU and Germany really pushing back, against these new sanctions. So yeah, so it puts Trump in a very awkward dilemma in regards to, does he? I guess there's this process where he can let it go 20 or 30 days, and there's a non-sign. Basically, it comes. I'm not a constitutional expert or scholar. I don't claim to be, so I'm not quite sure exactly how it works. However, what I do know is just some of the most recent comments that Germany has put forth, and that's the fact that, quote unquote, our stance remains that we will not accept any extraterritorial use whatsoever of these U.S. sanctions against European companies. President Trump knows that, and so do the State Department and the U.S. administration. Sanctions policies are neither a suitable nor an appropriate instrument for promoting national export interests in the domestic energy sector. And when you break this down and you take a look at it, Bankster, it's very interesting to see that these sanctions would impact the $10 billion Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. And this would make transporting gas about 40% cheaper, and here's what's important, than through land-based pipes via Ukraine. So are these sanctions more geared towards steering the economy of Ukraine? And we know that Joe Biden's son, I believe, I'm not sure if he still has a stake in that gas pipeline company, but it appears these sanctions have nothing more to do than Russian hacking than it does more about energy.
Right. And that's, this has been one of the things I've always written about all through history. Empires come and go based on who has control of the energy sources. It's always been about energy for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And I got that this article by Pepe Escobar mentioned that line by Germany, we don't accept this extraterritorial use. They see that they're being used as cannon fodder, like they're the cannonball that is being shot back and forth across Europe from between America and Russia. And there was one of the people in the article suggested that this may have been what actually killed Brzezinski, that he saw that this was coming. The day when Germany and Russia would be back in each other's arms.
United, right? Yeah, and to think that the U.S. has kind of pushed this, so for our European allies, be careful what you ask for in terms of U.S. sanctions against Russia.
Yeah, and that's even kind of what was hinted there, that this may have been the whole plan. You want to talk about 3D chess and 4D chess, that this is how these people operate, setting up a certain antagonism between two people when actually the goal of those two parties is to induce a certain reaction from the third party, which is Germany. Someone is trying to create this this overall new power structure between China, Russia, and Germany. And Jim Willey has talked about this for years, that when the day came when Germany, Russia, and China were fully allied with each other, then that was goodbye for the petrodollar and everything else.
Right, right. Well, and it's very interesting. And yesterday I was listening to Dave from the X22, because I don't want to take credit for this, but he specifically recommended the administration, Donald Trump, to sign two executive orders. And the number one executive order would be to cancel out the policies, the laws that give congressmen and congresswomen and senators the immunity from insider trading in regards to the stocks that they hold. And I don't know if most Americans know that most people that work in the finance industry, almost all Americans are have these laws in regards to insider trading. We remember the diva from Kmart, and I always forget her name, that was prosecuted under those laws. But our Congress representatives and Senate are immune from this. So cancel that out. Let's expose what stocks that they own and their special interest of that. And then the second thing that Dave recommended too was to go ahead and sign an executive order removing them from the exemption of the health care bill that allows them to have their Cadillac plans and their treatments, put them on the VA system, put them on, impact them where it hurts them the most, and knock them down a couple of levels. So I thought that was great insight from Dave to share that mentality that there are some things Trump could do in the form of executive orders to impact the Congress and Senate, to kind of wake them up, if you will.
Yeah, that is a good line. And I was even wondering that when the Congress passed the sanctions bill, it made me it reminded me of that line in one of the Star Trek movies when Captain Kirk was faced with that computer test, and it was called the Kobayashi Maru test.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And the way he beat it was by simply changing the game. He changed, he couldn't. So that is what the president could do, is simply change the game. He's faced with either signing or not signing the sanctions bill. Well, but what if he throws in a third option, which is to set up these other executive orders that are designed as a 1-2 punch in the background against the other congressmen. So there's things he could be doing, unless it is the plan for these sanctions to go into effect in order to force Germany into this new relationship, which, as W has always mentioned to us, that there are forces that are moving the chess pieces of the world. So don't be surprised if we see this big new alliance between Germany, Russia, and China.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's witnessing. And in the meantime, Bankster, you take a look at what's happening here on the U.S. domestic side.
Yeah.
And I laugh every time you open up the news, and they're talking about how high the stock market's going, and industries and growth, and but they don't talk about some of the real numbers. They don't share the fact that total government and personal debt is now exceeding $41 trillion, and that amounts to basically almost $330,000 per household of debt that we're incurring. And it's been since the 80s. In 1980, the total debt, personal debt and government debt, was just over $3 trillion. And now you fast forward to where we are today, and it's increased almost 14 times since Ronald Reagan was first elected president. These massive bubbles that are popping up everywhere, the auto industry, the job market in terms of the part-time economy, the student loan bubbles, all these things that are occurring. And now we're learning about this massive debt that's occurring. So it's going to be very interesting to see, how we handle this heading into the fall.
All right. Yeah, that's the big question mark. In fact, I was going to mention, we haven't heard a lot too much about where the Aramco IPO is at. Although I was noticing, I looked up some news yesterday that one of the things that Saudi Arabia is trying to decide in connection to the launch of this 5% stake of their oil company is which foreign exchange will get to manage that. And it could be, they need to decide whether they want this listed on the London Stock Exchange or Wall Street, or they could go with Singapore or Hong Kong, and there's some other possibilities. But the article was mentioning, how clever it would be if Hong Kong got to list the where the 5% stake is going to be. And this is another thing Jim Willie has been talking about, that the end of the petrodollar could come through if China was to outbid everybody and get the 5% stake in Aramco, that would give them sort of a privileged position with Saudi Arabia, and they would be in position to start asking now for Saudi Arabia to sell oil in the Chinese currency. So, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. If so, and the article mentioned that 2/3 of Saudi Arabia's oil gets sold to Asia, and it would make sense for the Hong Kong exchange to become the one that manages that listing, I guess. So that would
That's a
have
great take.
yeah, that's going to have a big effect on what happens domestically to the dollar in this country.
Right, and I can't remember. I know it's been a while since I read, but in terms of the IPO for that and the United States brokerage firm or whoever handles those IPOs, it appears that perhaps that they felt that it was overvalued at that time, and I'm not sure where the Saudis, very well could be. And you're exactly right. If you take a look at what's happening in the Middle East right now, we're seeing a huge pivot away from U.S. influences. That very well could be the demise and the change of the petrodollars in the event that it gets listed in a foreign country.
Right. Yeah, that's going to shake some people up. Anyway, what was that other thing you were talking about, the microchipping in Wisconsin?
Yeah, this is again just something that it amazes me, the attempt to normalize these things. So we have news breaking, and I caught wind of this last week, but it appears that this Wisconsin company held a party to implant the microchips into their employees, Bankster.
Yeah, that's right. Let's celebrate our slavery. Yeah, this is something Joseph Farrell and Catherine Austin Fitts have mentioned this. Catherine Austin Fitts went back and she was looking at the reasons why slavery actually fell apart in this country. She said there was a problem with the collateral. The slaves were a big asset to in the South, obviously, was an intrinsic part of their economic system, but when the slaves kept running away, they didn't have any way of really tracking them or bringing them back. She said there was no way to perfect the collateral. I can't remember if she used the phrase securing the collateral or perfecting the collateral. Right. And so the point was being made, well, we've certainly solved that problem now. If only we had had these tracking devices back in the 1800s, then there might not have ever been an end to slavery in the South, because then you would have been able to track your collateral. Yeah, so and this is part of it. I've been watching this growth of the whole transhumanist kind of movement that's coming. I wanted to let people know there's a movie that came out, although not in general release, but I'm wondering if we'll see it coming out to more and more theaters. The name of the movie is called Super Sapiens, like the word Homo sapiens, but the word Super Sapiens. And it is about this whole Ray Kurzweil singularity thing. And this is not being presented as a science fiction movie, because it's no longer science fiction. It's here, and the bricks have been laid for this road of creating this coming world that's combining humans with human hybrids. And there's even people already discussing the changes to the social order as we move into a world where part of the population is fully human and part of the population is enhanced human. And there's all these questions about, well, does the full Constitution really apply? Or, it's a very strange world that is being planned and laid out in front of all of us. Anyway.
It's one of those things, Bankster, and because I've been listening to for quite a while, even before I think the affiliation with Rogue Money, and to hear it 5 years ago, because you've been talking about this for quite a while, correct?
Yeah, at least it seems like a long time, but for me, it's only been about a year, and that shows you how fast this development is coming.
Yeah, and at the time I was very, very skeptic of it. And now that more information, and they are kind of flaunting it, if you will, they're kind of putting it, right in front of our faces in terms of what they are doing. So this company, 3 Square Market, is in placing these RFID chips inside their employees that will, what they're stating is that this will be used for them to log onto their computers, I'm sure clock in and out for work, be able to pay for their vending machines at work, all these things that sound like, hey, this is going to make your life easier, right? Now they assure employees this is a voluntary program, but they ensure that there's no, quote unquote, no GPS data, on these microchips encrypted. However, if you believe that,
right, exactly.
Yeah, and interesting enough, we witnessed legislation a year ago, and I believe it was under Avante's law, and that directly ties to the kids on the spectrum that have a tendency to wonder quite a bit, to get lost, and parents at that time were asking for the ability to, almost like they do pets right now. They embed a chip in the plants for GPS in case they get lost and all that. And it was kind of interesting that you had huge advocacy for this going, because it sounded like a really good things, because this happens a lot for those children, those kids. But at the right moment is when the military, the police state, if you will, stepped in to say, well, we also want to use this data to track and use for pre-crime, to build their huge database of what they're generating and, where people are going. And an interesting thing to me is that this ties directly into some of the impact and some of the things that we're seeing Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan do with Facebook and the analytics that Facebook is using now. Whenever you're at a grocery store, it's asking you to check in. Whenever you're anywhere, it's mining this data. And recently I learned that Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan donated $10 million to advance health using big data. So again, it kind of ties back to exactly what you said, that merging of tech and health for potentially what could be a transhumanist agenda.
Right. Yeah. It's already well on the way. And it's true. I mean, people are going to, they're already embracing it, like these employees in Wisconsin. They see all the fun of it and the good of it. And yes, there's a lot of, great ideas to do with the whole thing. I was thinking yesterday, I got myself one of those little Echo Dot devices, just to see what it does, and how it works. And I was thinking, oh, what a great thing it would be. And if there was some app that allows you to use it as an emergency device, like if you're living on your own, and instead of one of those I've fallen and I can't get up devices.
Right.
Because I was reading somewhere, I read an article that said a lot of people who use those devices will take them off for a while, to go take a shower or something. But then a lot of accidents happen while you are taking a shower, so you don't have the thing on you. And so you can't use the device if it's not on you. But if you have an Echo device or like a Google Home Assistant, it can pick up your voice everywhere in the house. So if you have a problem, if you could just reach out and say, hit your launch word and say call 911, then that solves the problem. That would be a great thing to have. And right now I thought, well, why doesn't it already have that ability? And one of the reasons is because a lot of regulations prohibit the calling of 911 on a device that you can't interact with on the other end. So, but that is one step away from, it seems like there are apps already being devised, and if police centers or emergency centers just need to be enabled on their end with the ability to talk back to the device in the house. But then once you do that, now you're opening up your house to all of those departments. So I mean, you have your little Echo device. You've basically opened your whole house to anybody listening to you in any kind of emergency field. So there's good and bad in that, but
Right. Yep.
yeah,
Exactly.
anyway.
Yeah, it's convenient. It's convenient, but buyer beware.
Right. Right. And you may not, it's going to be that you won't even have to be able to beware, because it will come and it will simply just be instituted on you whether you want it or not.
Yeah, you won't have a choice. Exactly. So, all right, Bankster Slayer. Any closing thoughts?
No, it's been sort of it's like we were mentioning last week, it's been like quiet and yet not quiet. So we'll just have to see what's happening. Oh, another thing is I would say to everyone, keep an eye on what's happening between the Palestinians and Israel. There was another knife attack last night of a Palestinian against the assistant store manager at a supermarket. And so this has been an escalation of tensions between Palestine and Israel over who has control over Jerusalem, which is what W has been telling us about for weeks and months now.
Yes, yes, I completely agree with that. So, all right, everyone, thank you so much. Again, make sure to go to roguemoney.net, check out the great articles there. And James, again, kind of breaks down an article, ties in with Harley Schlanger as well in regards to the whole rushing, hacking, fake narrative that's being built. I want to apologize. Yesterday, Dex and I never got a chance to catch up for the Trading Terradome. We did email late last night. We are going to get that scheduled this week to make that happen. And then later today, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it will be Hump Day with Bix Weir. So it'll be another fun day with Bix. Should be a great show to make sure to dial back in and listen for that. So that is it for now. Everyone have a great day, and we will talk to everyone later on. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.